This is Jennifer Cano, narrating Hinges of Broams Eld, Chapter 1, Death on the Doorstep, copyright by Phantom Publishing. Livy Hinge's aunt lay dying in the backyard, which Aunt Neela thought was darned inconvenient. "Nebula," she called, hoping her weakened voice would reach the barn where that lazy cat was no doubt taking a nap. If Neela had the energy to get up and tap her foot, she would. If only that wretched elf hadn't attacked her, she'd have made her delivery by now. Instead, she lay dying. She willed her heart to take its time, spreading the poison. Her heart, being just as stubborn as its owner, ignored her and raced on. A cat with a swirling orange pattern on its back ran straight to Nebula and nuzzled her face. "Nebula!" She was relieved the cat had overcome its tendency to do the exact opposite of whatever was most wanted of it. Reaching into her bag, Neela pulled out a delicate leaf made of silver. She fought to keep one eye cracked open to make sure the cat knew what to do. The cat took the leaf in its teeth and ran back toward the barn. It was important that Neela stay alive long enough for the cat to hide the leaf. The moment Neela gave up the ghost, the cat would vanish from this world and return to her master. Satisfied, Neela turned her aching head toward the farmhouse, where her brother's family was nestled securely inside. Smoke curled carelessly from the old chimney in blissful ignorance of the peril that lay just beyond the yard. The shimmer shield Neela had created around the property was the only thing keeping her dear ones safe. A sheet hung limply from a branch of the tree that stood sentinel in the back of the house. It was Halloween, and the sheet was meant to be a ghost. But without the wind, it only managed to look like old laundry. Neela's eyes followed the sturdy branch to Livy's bedroom window. She knew what her failure to deliver the leaf meant. The elves would try again, and this time they would choose someone young enough to be at the peak of their daydreaming powers. A druid of the Hinge bloodline, about Livy's age. Poor Livy, who had no idea what she was. Well, that would change soon enough. Neela could do nothing about that now. Her willful eyes finally closed. In the wake of her last breath, a storm rose up, bringing with it frightful wind and lightning. The sheet tore free from the branch and flew away. The kitchen door banged open. Livy Hinge, who had been told to secure the barn against the storm, found her lifeless aunt at the edge of the yard. A year later, Livy still couldn't think about Aunt Neela without feeling the memories bite at her, as though they only wanted to be left alone. Thankfully, Livy wasn't concerned about her aunt at the moment. Right now, Rudis Brutimal was going to get what was coming to him. Hugh, Livy's twin, sat next to her on the bus. His nose was buried in a spelling book. The bus lurched dangerously close to their stop. If they waited any longer, they'd miss their chance. She looked over her shoulder to make sure Rudis was watching. Opening her backpack, she made a show of removing a bologna sandwich with thick slices of soft homemade bread. Hugh studied the book like it was the last thing he might ever see. Livy nudged him. He tore his eyes from his book and delivered his lines as though he were reading them. "Hey, can I have some? I'm starving." Well, at least he could make his stomach growl on demand. "I get the first bite." Livy had looked forward to this moment all day. She unwrapped the sandwich and as slowly as she could brought it toward her mouth. For a sickening moment she thought she might actually succeed. Thankfully, Rudis reached over the seat and grabbed it just before it touched her lips. Livy smiled, until Hugh cleared his throat. She was supposed to be pretending to quake with fear. "What are you staring at, weird hoe?" The bully mashed Hugh's face against the window. Hugh squirmed and let out a muffled moan. This was not part of the plan. Livy stood. "Let him go!" Rudis obliged, long enough to shove Livy into the aisle. She landed on her back with a thud, the air whooshing from her lungs. Some of the other kids laughed, the cowards. One of Livy's little brothers peeked around the side of the seat. When Livy shook her head, he sank back down. The bully stood over her, his jaw working side to side like a cow chewing cud. Though Livy's back smarted, she found immense consolation in the way Rudis was enjoying his sandwich. Over the bully's shoulder she saw Hugh's delighted grin. The bus rolled to a stop between the Brutamel and Hinge farms. Livy got to her feet, grabbed her backpack, and moved down the aisle. Rudis pushed Livy forward. "Hey, Nelms, want to help me walk the Hinges home?" Denton Nelms grunted and rose out of his seat. "Great," Hugh murmured. Denton was the only kid in school bigger than Rudis. Of the two, Rudis was brighter, but that wasn't saying much. Denton was about as smart as a turkey drowning with its mouth open in the rain. Livy and Hugh had taken to calling him Denthead. Livy got off the bus, the bullies close behind. Hugh squeezed his way between Livy and Rudis. "You okay?" "Course." Livy couldn't keep the corners of her mouth from rising up in rebellion. Just a few more bites and the sandwich would be gone. It seemed a crime to keep the secret ingredient all to herself. Overhead, storm clouds gathered as though curious about what the next few moments would bring. Rudis was 13, just a year older than the twins, but he towered over them. He was thick everywhere, with thighs big as tree trunks and broad, beefy shoulders. Even on her tiptoes, Livy only came up to his armpits, which smelled of moldy potatoes. If it ever came to a fight, her own twiggy legs and arms would be useless. The worst she could do was jab him with her bony elbows and hope she punctured something. Rudis took another bite. "Stolen sandwiches taste way better than the regular kind, don't you think?" he asked Denthead. Livy eyed her 4 youngest brothers, who were crowding in on her. They meant well, but she didn't want them getting in the middle of what was about to happen. "You all better get home." "Why?" Hugh whispered, watching them go. He narrowed his eyes at his sister. "Don't. Just don't." Livy knew this wasn't what she and Hugh had agreed on. Hugh was all for secret revenge, but he liked a well-thought-out plan. She liked to think on her feet. When she was sure her little brothers had enough of a head start, Livy swallowed and said, "The sandwich is good, huh?" Her hands shook, and she hid them behind her back. "Don't," Hugh repeated. "Then, if you do this, you are on your own." Livy pressed on. "Want to know the secret ingredient?" Hugh elbowed her. "I'm serious." A fat raindrop landed on Livy's cheek. The storm was about to break. Rudis pushed Hugh out of the way. "Besides the awesome mayo?" he asked, popping the last bite into his mouth and making exaggerated sounds of enjoyment. "That's no mayo," Livy said, and waited until she had his full attention. "It's cow slobber. I got it fresh from Beulah this morning, all gooey and slimy." Rudis stopped chewing and spit out his last mouthful on the dirt road. Livy had no idea anyone's face could turn so green, nor had she imagined that Rudis could gag and take a swing at her at the same time. Only now did she question her judgment. She'd counted on at least 2 full minutes of violent heaving, during which time she and Hugh would make a clean getaway. No such luck. The one thing she knew she could count on, no matter what he said, was Hugh. Just in time, he dove in and pushed the bully. Rudis missed, his fist cutting the air close to Livy's ear. The clouds cracked open and poured. Hugh grabbed her arm. "Run!" He pulled her toward the forest across the road. It was the shortcut to their house. The goons started after them. They were catching up when Dent had slipped in the mud. His feet sideswiped Rudis's, and they both went down in a heap. "Idiot!" Rudis got up and smacked his sidekick in the back of his head. "We're gonna lose them!" The twins headed straight for the woods, which ordinarily would have provided plenty of cover. But this October there had been no autumn reds and golds. The leaves had all turned black and fallen off 3 weeks before. Only the evergreens, deep in the woods, would give Livy and Hugh cover. They headed for their favorite hiding spot. "Why'd you do that?" Hugh shouted over his shoulder to his twin, "as if the doofus needs another excuse to pummel us." Twigs slapped their legs and clutched at their clothes. The swipes left thin smears of purple dust that had recently settled over the forest. "Bet he won't take your lunch again." "Yeah," Hugh said between ragged breaths. "But if it's between him demolishing my lunch or my face, I'd choose my lunch every time." Behind them, the bullies were losing ground. They were no match for the twins' light feet and long legs. "Almost there," Livy said, making a last dash for their hideaway. Just as the twins slid under the cover of a broad evergreen, the bullies crashed into view. The tree was one Aunt Neela had helped them find the year before. They came nearly every day. It was the closest they could come to being near her. The limbs started far overhead, and the tips of the long, heavy boughs dipped all the way to the ground. Rudis stopped running and grabbed the back of Denthead's hoodie to stop him. Lightning flashed, revealing Hugh's pale face inside the domed tree. Overhead, thin branches snapped. There was something up there. Rudis stood still. "You hear that?" Livy strained to see. A cat perched on a high branch, its fur orange with a swirling pattern. The lightning had likely startled it. The stupid thing was going to give away their position. It took another tender step down the tree, causing more loud snaps. "There! That one!" Rudis exclaimed, heading straight for the tree where the twins were hiding. "I'll look," Dent had said. Livy's heart lurched in time with his heavy steps. He reached forward and lifted the branch in front of her. Livy ducked. Hugh's fists were all balled up, ready for a sucker punch. But Dent had said, "Nothing here." Why didn't he squeal on them? He had to have seen Livy. The cat crept along the branch toward her. Apparently, it was completely unaware of the trouble it had just caused. Just like a cat, Livy thought. She was about to shoo it away before she thought she saw something dangling from its mouth. The cat leaned forward, offering it to Livy. In the shadows, it was hard to tell what it was. She had received all manner of gifts from the cats on the farm: mice, birds, moths, dragonflies. Once she was even presented with a bloated 3-day dead chipmunk. Livy had no fear of any of these things and reached forward to take the offering. It was no dead animal or maimed bug. It was a leaf made of the thinnest silver and hard as glass. She shoved it into her pocket so she could take a closer look under less hazardous circumstances. A sharp clap of thunder shook the ground. Forcing a gasp from Hugh, Livy covered his mouth. Too late. Startled, the cat leapt from its position and darted out of the tree. "Hey!" Rudis lunged after it. "Get it!" Denthead, slow on the uptake, watched it go, and then pitched a few useless steps in the direction the cat had run. Rudis rewarded him with a punch. "It's just a cat." Denthead rubbed his arm. "There's no such thing as just a cat, you dimwit," Rudis growled. Before Livy knew what was happening, Rudis stepped forward and jerked the branch in front of her aside.